Well, hello there, and welcome to WTA Weekly for the last week of, top level women's tennis of the year. Much as we herald the WTA finals, really it's all about the Billie Jean King Cup as the finale to the main women's tennis season. There are obviously ITFs and things still going on. It might be worth keeping an eye on those to see if anyone can sink themselves up the rankings to get into either an Australian Open seeding like Anna Navarro's trying to do, or get themselves a top 100 space like Alicia Parks did at the back end of last year.
Mm.
Um, but that's not what this is about. This is about the Billie Jean King Cup. And I am here with our man on the ground, John Silk. John, how are you doing? You feeling fresh?
Yeah, actually, been pretty fatigued, I would say, the last 12, 24 hours or so. But the tournament had a crescendo of sorts. Not quite the drama of other team events when we've had it go down to the sort of final point of a doubles encounter. But I still think there were plenty of highs that we'll be touching on today.
Yeah, agreed. And there's been a few stories that have come out of this one, I think. I think why don't we start with the biggest story, which is Canada have won the leading women's national international team event for the first time ever in the history of Fed Cup, Billie Jean King Cup, whatever you want to call it. Um, Mainly spearheaded by Leylah Fernandez. I mean, there's been other stars of the show, like everyone in that Canadian team did a great job. But really, it was all about it. This week's kind of been all about Fernandez, really.
Yeah, and I mean, there were sort of two or three players this week that I thought this week could be about, if you like, and she was one of them. Danielle Collins was another one who played superbly as well. On another day and another moment, they knock out the Czech Republic, and it's Danielle Collins who we're talking about here right now as being the sort of star, the person who carried or took responsibility, I think is a better way of putting it in Leylah's case for the team, because carried wouldn't quite do it justice, bearing in mind the unbelievable role, of course, that Stakusic played as well, and we'll be coming to her, I'm sure, at various points throughout the show. Hi, Kirit. Thank you very much for that, as well. So there'll be plenty more of those press conferences coming as well from the Davis Cup, where we also have accreditation. So we'll be there in about just over a week from now, or bringing you stuff from there from actually probably less than a week from now, because Sunday, Monday will be the sort of build-up press conferences. But that is for another day. Yeah, Leylah, I saw her practicing on Tuesday, and I thought, could be your week. I mean, I know we say that about a lot of players, and then at the end of the week we go, yeah, I told you so. But I did think that she might enjoy this responsibility, if you like. And that's the key word. She was sensational. She was taking the ball so early. I spoke to her about that, and she said that she wanted to have sort of front foot tennis, and she showed that. I mean, in the last match, she won it 6-2, 6-2, which probably does tell the story in that encounter she had with Paolini. She won all of her singles matches. She also got in on the doubles action, winning that. And probably you could argue that the main win for them was on the Saturday, when they came from 1-0 down to the Czech Republic, ultimately prevailing again thanks to Leylah. So, yeah, she was the star.
She was indeed. You were talking about her taking the ball early, and that seems to be key to her kind of form. But like, she's been in great form since kind of the end of the Asian swing, where she won that title in Hong Kong, I think, and then had a couple of scraps with Siniakova. But that obviously seems to give a nice momentum going into this, and it's been a good end of season for her. What were conditions like? Were they fast? Were they slow?
Slow, gritty.
Slow.
This was something that I think most of us were keen to find out at the beginning. It was a sort of hurried together. Is not the case, not at all. I think it was a perfect environment, but it's a temporary sort of scenario. It's not like they were rocking up at a permanent venue which is used for tennis. It was played in something that's curiously known as the Olympic Stadium in Seville, although they've never actually had an Olympics. They bid for an Olympics and decided to build a stadium and call it the Olympic Stadium, but then they didn't get that Olympics. And in fact, the stadium itself is a bit of a white elephant, in that it barely gets used for 12 months of the year because there's 2 football clubs that have their 2 stadiums already. So they try to use it as and when they can. And the Billie Jean King Cup was an opportune moment. So they had that kind of on what would normally be the grass in the middle, if you like, but obviously they had it built, and they had apparently there was wood underneath the actual surface itself. But a lot of the players said it was fairly gritty and hard. Regarding the sort of environment as well, it was a really good Billie Jean King Cup atmosphere. The stadium, off the top of my head, would be about 1,500 capacity, so not massive, but every single match was probably somewhere between half full and full. The Spanish ones were obviously full. There was 2 courts as well, by the way. So that the smaller one probably had a bit less than 1,000 capacity, but it was great to see that the Czechs, which seem to just love to travel and probably earmark this weekend or this week every year, and then off they go. There was a few hundred Czechs at all the matches that they were playing. Plenty of Canadians, plenty of locals getting involved. The atmosphere was loud and vociferous, as we like it for these sort of team events. And I just want to say that it was a stark contrast to certain other tournaments that we've seen in the last 12 months, but we see every year on the tour, where we're watching it and the options aren't good on TV. But here, they very much were.
That's amazing. And because I was wondering about that, because we've seen how Davis Cup with its sort of Spanish base has struggled a little bit, but it's great to see them turning out in force for the Billie Jean King Cup. So maybe Seville is a better location than Malaga.
Maybe more than Madrid. Have they had the Davis Cup in Malaga before or in recent years? Because I remember the one in Madrid in 2019.
Yeah.
I can't remember where it was last year, but I would have thought Malaga would get even more international, because I mean, Malaga is a smaller city than Seville, but Malaga is a popular tourist destination. I guess it just depends on who's playing. I mean, this year they might have a bit of luck with Britain qualifying, so I'm sure there'll be plenty of Brits there traveling over, and also there's a lot of Brits living near Malaga anyway. So, but yeah, Seville took. I mean, there's a lot of school kids going at various points earlier in the week as well. Even I'm in a very small suburb of Seville, and at breakfast this morning, the waiter said, I said, "Oh yeah," I said, "Where are you from?" I said, "From the UK." I said, "What are you doing here?" I said, "I've been working at the tennis event." He went, "Oh, Billie Jean King Cup," and it was just something like, okay, that's interesting that the 55-year-old waiter knew about this. I think there's been a lot of, albeit not around the city. There wasn't. I was hoping to see sort of these posters and stuff around the city and the big banners and whatever you get to see, but I didn't see that. But what I think they did do is they did do a bit of a media drive, and certainly in and around all the schools for the matches that didn't involve Spain, they made sure that they got plenty of kids involved too.
Yeah, so they really kind of promoted it, which is something that obviously we didn't talk. We talked about sort of something not happening with
And
other
not too
tournaments.
expensive. Yeah, I know. And not too expensive. Yes, I know. Not too expensive either, Nick. I know someone who paid, I think they paid 55 euros, so about 50 quid, for Saturday, both ties. So that
Oh wow,
potentially is and the final. So that's 55 euros for basically 3 ties.
that's incredible. That is
Yeah.
such good value for money. That's got to be one of the best tickets
I
in
mean, you
tennis.
basically get to see a match of tennis for 10 euros each, more or less.
Yeah, that's a really good. That's a really good gig. Okay, note to self: check out Seville for when Billie Jean King Cup is back in 2024. And note to all the viewers as well: if you can get to Spain, check it out.
Is it
It's going to
coming
be.
back to Seville next year?
I think it is. Yeah, I think it's back in
Oh, I
Seville again.
hope so. Oh, that would be
I
great.
heard it was. I
I've
heard
only
it was.
been here a week. I should have known this, I know, but that would be great, because I think that can also give the tournament momentum, because then people will know, people will talk about it this year, and then they'll be able to come back next year, when they're like, oh, I didn't realize it was going to be. So I heard about it and I wish I'd gone. That's the kind of thing that might help it even more next year, where they can even maybe make the stadium a bit bigger.
Okay, no, I can't see anything officially confirming the venue. I
Okay.
just heard someone say it was at Seville
Okay.
again. But
I mean, Conchita Martinez was the sort of tournament director this week. Although I must say I didn't see much of her myself, but I'm sure she was very busy doing lots of other things than worrying about where talking tennis were. But hopefully you will have seen one or two bits and pieces we did from there. I had a lot of fun doing some spontaneous live streams, including one that lasted 7 minutes, because during the live stream, it was like the USA team are coming to press conference now. So Carlos, who sort of jumped on the stream with me, and I said, we'll abandon this and we'll come back in half an hour. So we can sort of kill two birds with one stone, so to speak. But it was a good time all right. And I really do hope that Seville, can get other tennis tournaments, if not Billie Jean King Cup, then something else. I know it has a challenger, which comes during the second week of the US Open, which, to be honest with you, I will try and get, of course, press accreditation for the US Open. But if I don't get it, I'll probably come over to Seville for the
Pop down to
challenger.
Seville.
Yeah.
That might be quite fun. Might run into Damien down there.
Yeah, Damien is in Sweden right now. Now, if Poland is deep and dark, I don't know where Sweden is on the darkness barometer, because it's pretty dark up there right now. But he's there at a challenger, and he was in Germany at a challenger a couple of weeks ago. And yes, put it like this: Seville is much sunnier than those locations.
Let's go back to the tennis.
Yes, sorry, Nick. I have gone.
I wanted to talk about the tournament anyway, and I think it's worth talking about. So the reason why I initially asked about the conditions was actually because I just wanted to sort of get an idea of it. So it doesn't surprise me that obviously Fernandez was feeling the ball pretty well, but she does like slower conditions. She's obviously in the past done very well at the French Open. She's been very successful in Mexico, which tends to be a sort of a slow hard court type vibe over there.
US Open is the slower of the two hard court slams, I think.
It is, yes. I mean, it's not super slow, but yes, no. I think she was benefited a little bit from the balls they had that year, maybe.
Okay. By the way, Nick, before I forget, she got her first top 10 win since that US Open run at the Billie Jean King Cup, beating Vondrousova. I mean, being Vondrousova is impressive. And I know you might say that Vondrousova might be tired, but I spoke to Vondi about this after the match. Can I call her Vondi? I don't know. Just did. And she said, no, she was physically fine. But, Leylah was just sensational.
Yeah. And you can't say that, because Vondrousova is a Grand Slam champion, but we know how good Leylah Fernandez is, because you say, like, first top 10 wins since that US Open, where she beat two Grand Slam champions plus an eventual Grand Slam champion in Sabalenka.
Lost in the final, of course.
3 world number ones: Kerber, Osaka, Azarenka.
And Sabalenka would go on to be one.
Sabalenka, not Azarenka. Wrong Belarusian. So her being able to beat Vondrousova shouldn't be a surprise on her day.
I mean, she also showed a lot of that grit and determination in coming from behind in certain matches and tight matches. Many of her, not the final, of course, as I mentioned, winning 2-6 to love, 6-2, 6-2 over Paolini, but a lot of her run did involve some incredible sort of moments of grit and determination, and some lobs and some excellent winners down the line at big moments as well in tight matches.
How much of her do you think she was like primed, ready to go once she beat Sarah Srebotka in a match that, even though it was 2 sets, took almost 3 hours? I
mean, there was another match that Srebotka was involved in against Poland, I think. I'm going to say it was Lynette on Friday. And I think I watched an entire match whilst she was still in the tiebreak of the first set. And we were joking about the second set being sort of 20 minutes old and it's only 1-1 and this sort of thing. I say we, Carlos and I, who I hung out with quite a bit over the last 7 days. Hung out, by the way, mainly in the press room. I went to the bar from time to time, but Carlos was ploughing on through.
Carlos is an actual professional.
Yes, he is an actual professional. And that's probably why Punto de Break have almost 60,000 subscribers. And we're pushing 4,000, actually. We're actually very close. I expect to get to 4,000 probably sometime this week, particularly with the ATP finals gathering pace. But so anyway, so he was talking. But I think you're right. I think she did gather momentum throughout the week and just brought her best tennis. And whether that was the conditions, whether it was the fact that she enjoyed the responsibility, whether it was the fact that she just felt confident on the back of Hong Kong and 1 or 2 other results, whether it was 1 or 2 other players feeling a bit jaded towards the end of the season, I don't know. But it all came together very nicely for Leylah and Team Canada.
Well, I'm very much here for Leylah Fernandez coming into 2024 as a potential contender, big fan of the way she plays tennis, and I think she's a name that she's someone who gets crowds involved, who's going to be very popular, and I think her playing well and being a contender can only be good for tennis. And I've also been, and obviously she's been featured. She's currently for a couple of years been like the future of Canadian tennis, given that obviously her age, she's nearly 21, or she's 21 now, I think. Yeah, she's 21.
Yeah.
But obviously, like, we haven't heard too many things about up and coming Canadians until now, because the name you mentioned earlier, a name that I haven't been familiar with because she's been way down in the rankings. But yeah, 18-year-old Marina Stokka, now ranked 250 something in the WTA rankings. Yeah, won pretty much all but one of her matches. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. She had 3 singles matches and she won 2 of them. Her landmark victory, I think, was on the first day, or certainly in the first match that they had against the Swiss, I'm going to say. So she won that one, which kind of like was the one where it's like that came out of nowhere. Probably almost as equally surprising as the fact that she beat Trevisan in the final on Sunday. And I would put that maybe even higher because of the way it happened. So she goes up 4-1 in the first set against Trevisan. And Trevisan, by the way, have been playing very well this week too. Both her and Paolini, quite similar, levels in terms of the rankings, and bearing in mind 1 or 2 absences here, such as Iga Swiatek, of course, in terms of the fact that she was in Cancun on Monday. She was already planning on not coming, bearing in mind the final could have been on Sunday, but the way Cancun went, I'm sure that Iga was probably quite relieved that she made that smart decision. And we can talk about the scheduling of the 2 tournaments another time. But of course, I think you and I would both love to see these 2 tournaments a bit further apart in terms of the calendar, and maybe a little bit closer together in terms of the geography. That might help get the best players in the world appear at what they rightfully call the sort of World Cup of women's tennis. Anyway, Stokka. So in the final, she's 4-1 up in the first set over Trevisan. She then loses 5 games in a row, including her serve twice. The first time was on a double fault. And I'm thinking, my goodness me, what a mental mountain she now has to climb to get back into this match. I assumed that the first set was going to get away from her. She was 5-4 down. Trevisan was serving for that first set because she'd come from a breakdown to then go up a break. And she then breaks Trevisan, I think, to love, but she certainly does it convincingly. And I thought, wow, what a response. And I actually asked both the captain, but also Stokka after the match, how did you do that? You're a newbie. You're not. This is supposed to be a little bit more difficult to take these sort of mental jolts, and it was a mental jolt. And you could see that the second break almost came because of the first one, especially as it came on a double fault, as I said. And against somebody of Trevisan's stature in the game, and somebody who's not quite been there and done that and said that won the t-shirt. But you know what I mean? Trevisan is obviously much more established than Stokka. But she did come back, and then she won the next 3 games to win it 7-5. The coach, by the way, also said that she threw her in there, and I think not everyone was sure that Stokka, she'd won 1 and lost 1 in her previous 2 matches. So she'd had a breakout victory, but then she lost her singles match against somebody who was established, and I can't remember who it was. And it's like, oh, okay, she's had a great week. She's won a match, but
Krejcikova, wasn't it?
Krejcikova. Okay, thanks. It was the Czech Republic. Yeah, I couldn't remember who it was. So it's like, okay, it was just sort of, there was an unbelievable week. She's won 1, she's lost 1, and she'll still, whatever happens to her in Canada this week, it'll still have been a landmark week for her. But the coach had the confidence, or the captain had the confidence to put her in the final in the first match as well, sort of baptism of fire. And she said that she hoped she'd be okay, but she didn't know until she hit the first return to serve. And she said as soon as she hit that first return, she's like, I think she'll be okay today. And I had my doubts, as I said, midway through that first set, but she didn't, the captain. And also, by the way, I asked her Kusic about how she managed to get back, and she did give a nod to the captain because, of course, at the end of each changeover, and even during, of course, you get a lot of captain support, and they're sat next to you on the bench so they can talk to you through this. I'm not telling you this, Nick. Of course, I'm telling one or two people in the audience that maybe either didn't get to see the Billie Jean King Cup or are not quite aware of the format, but the actual captain, of course, is there by your side pretty much throughout the match. So, yeah, just incredible. And I think I sent you a message this week, which was like, this is just a shut and closed case. Shut and closed case. I don't know what the expression is. Open and shut case. Is it for Jakub Bobro Player of the Week? And it has to be her.
Yeah, absolutely. Has to be. Yeah, this is her big breakout moment, and kind of reminds me of another young Canadian teenager, but this time on the men's side, Denis Shapovalov. That's where we first heard of him in the Davis Cup, coming through and making his debut for Canada. Although I don't think his debut was as impressive as Stekusic, but it's where we kind of heard of him for the first time. And I think Stekusic is now made herself a name to keep an eye on, and that makes her a very worthy Jakub Bobro Player of the Week in my eyes.
Definitely. All right, well, Canada, unbelievable. But this show needs to sort of be around an hour or less because there's plenty of other things to talk about on the women's tour. And if you want to say anything about any of the results, I know you couldn't catch up with the tennis itself like I could. But I don't know if there was anything startling regarding the results you saw from Canada or anything else, Billie Jean King Cup. Well, I mean, I've got lots to say about Italy and Czech Republic. Don't go worry about that. But just in terms of Canada,
I think the performances, like even though I couldn't watch much of the tennis, everyone was talking about the performances, particularly about Stekusic and Fernandez. By the way, we should also not forget that Canada kind of came through their groups pretty. They had to really grit their way through their semi-final against Krajcikova, against Czechia. Krajcikova is not a country herself. That would be entertaining. But we talk about Fernandez, but actually the Fernandez-Dabrowski doubles partnership.
Beating Srebotka and Krajcikova.
Yeah, which is a pretty tough feat to do in women's doubles. Maybe not a feat many other people will achieve going forward. But that's something that maybe with Taylor Townsend and Leylah Fernandez maybe starting to play tennis less and less together, maybe Fernandez and Dabrowski should consider playing together on the main tour.
Yeah, I actually saw Townsend play doubles with Daniel Collins on Friday against Siniakova and Krajcikova. And in that doubles encounter, I mean, Townsend has a very good reputation in doubles and Collins not too bad either. But in that doubles encounter, I felt that Townsend was a little bit off it, and you can't afford to be off it against Krajcikova and Siniakova. And I actually thought that Canada did well to get it to 1-1 on Saturday in the semi-final, but I didn't think that they would do the come from behind win and end up with Leylah and Dabrowski winning that doubles match too, which probably is the match that basically won the title for them, or that day, because the Czech Republic were probably the favourites going into the tournament.
Yeah, and that was probably, I mean, you were on the ground. You might disagree with this assessment, but I would have thought that I think that was probably the tie of the event, Czechia, Canada, given how it was a kind of a turnaround job from Canada. They were the underdogs, but every match was actually fairly closely contested. I don't know where the judge's score was. I could be completely wrong there, but
2-1, and it was Leylah was a 3-setter, I think. And of course they lost the first.
Krajcikova wasn't close, but
it was 7-6, 7-5, was it?
No, the doubles.
The doubles,
7-6, yeah, and that's a close match. Even if it doesn't go to a third set, that's almost 2 hours, as tight a sets as you can get. So yeah, that was probably like a gritted out comeback from an underdog. That's got to be the main story, really. I think the only other tie that could have really rivaled it was maybe Czechia US. I
mean, I was excited by Czechia US. I mean, the thing was that could have been a final if the draws were slightly different, but of course they end up being in the same group along with the Swiss, which is an incredibly tough group. You could argue for having 4 teams in a group rather than 3. That way you don't get a scenario like Germany where they arrive, I guess, on Sunday or Monday, or in Laura Siegmund's case, Wednesday, I think, because she was in Cancun winning the WTA end of year finals title there in doubles. So she arrives Wednesday and then plays Thursday. And the problem with the 3 teams in a group is once you lose, you can lose once and still go into your last match with a chance of qualification. So you've got 2 or 3 days of feeling a part of the event, whether you're a fan, whether you're a player or coach or whatever. If, unfortunately, in Germany's case, you lose your first match, but you're not the first team to have played in the group, the other 2 teams have already played, you then lose that match. And I think it's probable, or almost certain, that you're out. And therefore, you've just literally arrived and you're gone already, if you see what I mean, with that scenario. If you're of the 3, because of course you'll have 2 teams or 2 nations play each other. The loser of that is not out, because if they go and win their next match, they're fine. But if their next match, like in France's case, is against Germany, France win that, Germany are automatically out. They don't get another bite at the cherry in their last match. Whereas, of course, if you had 4 teams in a group, you could definitely lose your first match and still be in with a very good chance of qualifying.
Yeah, and I also think that's part of the reason why 3-team groups are more complicated to follow.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm looking at Group B, the Slovenia, Kazakhstan, Australia match. They both won a match and lost a match,
Yeah.
and they were all 3 all in the matches. Played 1 tie, lost a tie, 3-3 in matches. How on earth do you work out the tiebreaker on that? So, whereas a 4th team can kind of bring, and I'm not saying that, like, if you follow the WTA finals and the ATP finals, sometimes it does get complicated. We saw that in Cancun a little bit with one of the groups. We were like trying to work out live on air how things were going to work out during the Vondrousova Goff match. But I think that this is so. Yeah, I can see why they're doing it like this, because
you don't want players playing too many matches, I know, but maybe even expand the teams to 6. But and
expand
if
the
you
teams
have,
to 6, or just have fewer teams in the finals,
or just have fewer teams in the final, have 2 groups of 4 and semi-finals and final. Yeah, that
play
would
them over
also
a couple
be.
of days or something. But
Yeah.
there's different ways of working it. But it's not an ideal. It works. So it does provide some drama. But I'm just having a look at the results from Czechia, US, and none of the matches were particularly interesting. So Czechia, Canada semi-final was probably the tie of the tournament, and probably decided the direction of it.
The Italians, though, I just want to say something on them. I mean, they were devastated to lose. I noticed that certain nations, there was, Slovenia, for example, getting to the semi-finals for the first time, was an incredible achievement. And I think you could tell in the way they took the defeats, it was still like a good time. I think, I don't know how the Czechs were, because I don't think they did press Saturday night after going out. But maybe they would be a bit annoyed because of how they would have probably had a great expectation on themselves. But I think a lot of players and a lot of teams do come into this as, you know what, we're on the tour all year long by ourselves. Okay. I know they have a team sometimes and a coach. Some of the players probably have a lot smaller teams than others, depending on how deep their pockets are. And if you're very low down the rankings, then I'm sure you probably barely have a team at all. But even then, you're still kind of on your own to some extent. Whereas this is like you know what, we're going to go there and we're going to have a good time and enjoy this and enjoy the camaraderie and enjoy meeting up with our captain for the first time in a few months, probably, and maybe being on the same team as other people, being able to sympathize in defeat and enjoy the victory together as well, must be quite a unique moment for these players, which I think they enjoy. However, when you get close to winning, like Italy in the final, then that sort of not camaraderie is the wrong word, that sort of sense of fun and enjoyment isn't there when you lose, if you like, because you are that. I think, say, for the Australians or perhaps to some extent the French captain, he looked pretty jarred, but a lot of the players are just, they're just enjoying it. They can relax. If you go out early, maybe you get to enjoy Seville, or you get to go home a bit earlier. If you get to the final or have a great run, then memories are made and all the rest of it. But Paolini and Trevisan in the press conference afterwards devastated. You could tell the captain was trying to put a brave face on it and was trying to keep things upbeat, but yeah, they were really upset. Maybe because they didn't quite show up in either of their matches, losing in straight sets as they both did. But yeah, so near yet so far for the Italians.
Yeah, so near, but so far, and they were one of the stories of the tournament, really. Let's be honest, the Italians, like Paolini and Trevisan. Well, Trevisan obviously we know has great pedigree as a Grand Slam semi-finalist. Jasmine Paolini's had some wonderful matches with big names, including Caroline Garcia this week, which was a real battle. They didn't drop a singles match going into the final. They were looking really dangerous.
They were.
And I think we were all looking forward to that, as that could go either way, really. So yeah, I'm not surprised they'd have to. It would have been a wonderful story for them to win it. And they played some wonderful tennis, as you expect them to do. But yeah, this is the second team event this year that they've lost in, because they also were in the final of the United Cup.
Oh, okay,
Losing to the US. But that was Trevisan and Bronzetti rather than Paolini.
Yeah, we do see certain players that kind of enjoy this environment a bit more than others. I mean, I'm thinking also in golf, there was a famous player, Colin Montgomery, who used to rise to the occasion in the Ryder Cup and used to be the star of the show, despite having, other players in the team that were at least equally as heralded. And yet when it came to winning a major, he never could quite get over, and he got nervous and would find that he found the pressure of the individual pressure in a major too much, but he loved the responsibility team. And sometimes I think about that with tennis players too, that rise to the occasion for their nation in team events such as this. And on occasions we saw that, and I think I spoke to Paolini about this, about maybe enjoying it. No, it was Trevisan actually, sorry, because as you mentioned, the United Cup and her having a good time there, and I think she beat Maria Sakkari among others in Australia, and then she was obviously doing so well until the final here as well. And yeah, I think people can rise and thrive in that environment, and others can cower in it. But Trevisan and Italy, yeah, so near yet so far, and as you say, twice this year it's been like that.
Yeah. So, well, hopefully one day Italy will win, not least because it will make our friend Mario very happy.
Dancing on the streets of Italy.
Indeed. Maybe we'll get that if Yannick Sinner wins the ATP finals in Turin.
With the Carota boys.
Oh, yes. Oh, that's Mario and the Carota boys in one space. That would be brilliant.
Yeah.
So yeah, but yeah, it's worth touching on them because also Paolini's such a fun player. Great.
She's a bit of an is she a bit of a nearly person in tennis right now? I mean, she lost in Tunisia recently in the final, where I also think that maybe she was a bit anxious in that particular encounter. She lost, I remember thinking in a 250 a year ago in Bratislava in the final. That was a 3-setter. I'm just not sure if she's actually even won a title.
She has. She actually won the very first title final she played in September 21 in Slovenia. She beat Alison Riske in the final. It was a hardcore event. Good. But yes, you're right. It's to a certain extent, she is becoming a little bit kind of Sakkari-ish maybe in that respect.
Yeah.
They don't play too dissimilarly either. But yeah, subsequently, she's been in 2 finals this year, but she's lost to Zhang Qinwen and Elise Mertens, neither of whom are players that you would be ashamed to lose to, I think, on the WTA.
Zhang Qinwen was where?
That was Palermo.
Oh, okay. She was in that final in Palermo as well. So that's 3 finals in the last 12 months that she's. Okay, so I mean, I know she has won a title, but it's 3 finals probably in a row that she's lost then, because I forgot about that one in Palermo, but there was also this one in Bratislava a year ago. And then, but yeah, she's coming up against a player in Tunisia that's never lost there, 10 out of 10 matches. And she came up against an absolutely incredible Leylah Fernandez yesterday.
Yeah. But she does have the capability of rising to the occasion. I'm looking at her Wikipedia page, and she's got 3 top 10 wins in her career, including against Arina Sabalenka and Elena Rybakina.
She said to me in Tunisia, she said she has the confidence. She can beat Rybakina, she said,
Yeah,
No, Sabalenka. Sorry, Sabalenka.
she can.
Yeah.
And there's no reason why. And obviously, she's got a win. I think she got a win over Azarenka at the US Open, or either a win or a very, very close match. I think that's where most of us kind of heard of her for the first time.
Yeah.
So yeah, Paoli, great. Great job. I think what else? Let's circle back to. We'll go back to the Czechs later. Let's talk about the other kind of underdog story of the tournament, which was Slovenia, because no one expected them to get to the semifinals. I did not think we were going to see Slovenia in the semifinals, but then I saw who was on their team, and we had Kaya Yivan, who has been a touted youngster for a very long time, obviously known mainly as Iga Świątek's bestie, and also Damir Srebotka, who is a Roland Garros semi-finalist and hasn't, a bit like Marco Cecchinato from a few years ago on the men's side, not really kind of lived up to the billing since. I think the only reason she was there because she beat Bianca Andreescu in round one of that year. But great, actually two pretty solid players. So when you looked at their lineup, it wasn't a massive surprise, but still, given the group they were in with Kazakhstan and Australia, they shouldn't have got out the group, and yet they made the semis.
Right. Yeah, they did. But I mean, as you say, Juvan was probably the one who was sort of pulling up some trees along, was the dancing. I'm just showing this press conference from them on this image from the press conference from them on Saturday. I think it was, Saturday when they lost to Italy. As you can see, they were in pretty good spirits despite that loss. But yeah, I mean, is it the first time at a Billie Jean King Cup as well?
That's a good question.
Time in the latter stages, anyway, semi-finals.
Yeah, it's actually the first time they ever got that far in a Billie Jean King Cup.
Yeah, I mean, of course, Australia, probably went into the tournament with not a great deal of belief. It was, I know
they had a lot of tied players because they had Hunter and Sanders.
Well, they also had a player who has played sort of one tournament since January in Tomljanovic, and I think that took the Slovenians a bit by surprise, and it also, it didn't work out. I mean, she lost the first set. It was pretty tight, to be fair. The first set that she played, it was probably the first match of the tournament, actually. And she was up a break, Tomljanovic, but ended up losing that break. And it was one of those sets where I think she had 4 or 5 break opportunities and took one, and her opponent had 2 and took 2. I think that might have been Juvan, actually. I'm not sure that she played on the opening day. But anyway, from that moment onwards, the Slovenes never looked back. Maybe they got a little bit lucky in their group. I mean, I mentioned a group with Switzerland, USA, and Czech Republic, and then you had another group, as you say, with Kazakhstan, Australia, and a sort of very fatigued or underprepared or not prepared, let's say, ideally in terms of fitness, Australia in their group, and Kazakhstan, of course. You're thinking, well, what about Rybakina? Rybakina was in town, but she didn't end up playing a minute of tennis. Some people might be going, well, what's the point? I think I have a far bigger question mark in terms of Paula Badossa's inclusion for the Spanish team than I do Rybakina, because I think with Rybakina, it's like, listen, we'll put her in the team. She's, one of the best players in the world. She has to be there. She also will see how she is after Cancun. Maybe she goes out early in Cancun and comes back and feels great. She did go out early in Cancun in terms of not making the semis there, but maybe I think she did have a bit of a cold. One of the members of the team or the organization from Kazakhstan told me on, I think, Wednesday. So I thought she wouldn't play in the first match. She didn't play in the second either, Rybakina. But then even then you might say, well, what's the point? Well, I'll tell you, if they make the semis, Kazakhstan, then maybe that's just another day for her to rest, another, whatever. You with a team event, that's the kind of luxury you can have. Paula Badosa was never playing in this tournament. Okay. She's been out with a back injury since May. Of course, you'll say, well, she did try and come back for Wimbledon, which was just clearly the wrong idea, because that then basically finished her season. Why she suddenly thought, or someone thought that, well, I think I know why. They wanted to sell tickets in Spain, and have Badosa there and have her in Seville and have social media posts from her eating donuts in Seville. I call them donuts to you, Nick, but they're called churros in Spain. They're a little bit of a sour donut, but they're sort of a Spanish delicacy. And there was a social media stuff with her and Tsitsipas eating them a week ago. So I guess that's the only reason, because there was never any intention to play her, that's for sure. But that's that's another story, and I understand it from a marketing perspective, but it's a pity for a fifth Spanish player that would have loved to have been there and could have played.
Well, hopefully, if they play in Seville next year, Pula will actually play.
Yeah.
That would be nice. I can't think who else. I think she must be the biggest Spanish player out there because they don't like Srebotka Tormo is a bit of a legend amongst tennis fans, but
Yeah.
I'm not entirely
Buxa
sure if
was
they've
on
got
the
any
team,
other
of
big
course,
name.
but
Muguruza. I
no,
don't think Muguruza. We're not even sure if Muguruza is going to play tennis again.
no.
Um,
Conchita Martinez, of course, I saw her, as I said to you.
she's
She
long
was sort of,
retired, John.
yeah. Arantxa Sanchez Vicario,
yeah, bring them back.
he
You
was in
imagine if they
town. There was probably
imagine,
more chance of them playing than Palabadoso, I'm telling you.
you imagine if okay, well, who's the Spanish team? Who have we got? And, like, you're Slovenia, and you're thinking like, hey,
If you've got
Kaya,
2 injuries
Mara,
or
what have we
something,
got? And like, it's Conchita Martinez and Arantxa Sanchez Vicario.
if you had a
Right.
couple of injuries, you might just throw them a racket and say, listen, we need you. Um, but anyway, yeah, so that was that. Spain, unfortunately, they lost both of their, I think they lost both of their group matches. They were certainly out in the group stage. So yeah, that was unfortunate for them, but it didn't really lose any momentum. I don't think the tournament in that can happen when the host nation go out, but at least the host nation were there and played 2 matches.
Yeah,
And I think
they got a good win over Poland.
they got a good win. So okay, so they won 1-1, lost 1. Sorry, my bad. Yeah, but they were out in the group stages. But you know, that's fine in a way because as I say, there was still plenty of big names and plenty of big teams, i.e. USA and Czech Republic still, as well as of course Canada and Italy who were in the final, to make us go, wow, this tournament has still got a lot of intrigue left in it, even if the host nation have gone.
Absolutely. I mean, like, yeah, I think the organisers must be like frustrated at how the draw worked out because, but then actually, no, maybe not because actually we've got some great stories anyway, even if you didn't have both.
We did, but I think, you know, you want upsets and you want Slovenia to do well, if you like, and you want a romance story. Maybe you also want the home nation to do well as well. But the problem is with that is sometimes, therefore, you might get a lopsided semi-final, which Italy, Slovenia ended up being, because that was done in 2. So just again, for those of you tuning in that aren't quite sure of how the format works, in the group stages, they still play the third match, which would be a doubles match, even if it's 2-0, because, of course, as we saw in the example of the Kazakhstan, Australia, and help me here, Nick, who was the other country in that group? Slovenia, right?
Yeah.
In that group, you those matches won and lost all end up counting if they all win one tie each, as that happened. So in the semi-finals and final, though, it's done. So there was no doubles there was no doubles match in the Slovenia Italy match because Italy won the 2 singles, and therefore you want some surprises, you want some fun, you want some shocks, but you still want to see some really exciting semi-finals and finals. We still more or less got that with the Canadians and Czech Republic, and to some extent Canada and Italy, even if it ended up being 2-0. But in a way, there was also this Czech Republic America match, or Czech Republic USA match on Friday, which I was very keen on watching because there was, you know, these are 2 teams that if they were kept apart could well have been in the final.
Yeah, that's true. Although I think Canada would still have something to say about that. And maybe even Italy as well, actually.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, definitely. Yeah. I'm just saying that they would have been among the 4 favourites probably before the tournament began.
Yeah, that's for sure. I mean, let's talk Czechia first. I think let's get that done because we've kind of skirted around them a little bit because it's kind of a surprise they didn't win the tournament, but that's because of Leylah Fernandez mainly beating Vondrousova and then taking down the Krejcikova Siniakova lineup. And it turns out this is the last time that we'll see Krejcikova and Siniakova play together, at least for a while, because they haven't ruled out getting back together. But apparently Katarina Srebotka wants to focus on her singles career.
Yeah, that's how it is. Did she say that as well?
Yeah, Siniakova and Krejcikova has also said the same thing. Like, this is how
it's okay. She said the same about Siniakova, but it does seem to be Siniakova's decision more than Krejcikova's, though.
Yes, that's right. And I'm not massively surprised because Siniakova actually has a lot of singles potential. Obviously, she had a very good, maybe this run in Asia gave her some ideas. I mean, like, they hadn't been playing together every week anyway. Like we saw in the grass court season, they went to separate countries to warm up for Wimbledon. But like that run in Asia for Siniakova, where really it was her and Fernandez who were tearing up the last 250s. And she was probably a more high-rated junior coming through, at least very early on, than Krejcikova. Early on, like she was sort of ranked top 10 for her age group at one point. So yeah, she has a lot of potential in singles. Maybe she feels like she can pull off a Krejcikova and rise up the rankings.
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't know if it would. I don't know if it would harm or hinder them if they just played a bit less. It'd be interesting to see if Coco Gauff and Jessica Pegula decide to sort of play a little bit less next year.
Jessica Pegula said on an interview on Tennis Channel they are going to be playing less next year.
Yeah, but still, I mean, I still think it's not bad. You know, I think, you know, maybe just do it at slams or even, you know, do it at slams on surfaces where you think that suits your game better. You know, in Pegula and Goff's case, is a bit of a tricky one with Goff being so adept on clay, but maybe they might go, you know what, we'll do it at the US Open and maybe we'll do it at Wimbledon or something like that, or we'll do it at US Open and maybe Australia. And maybe just skip the clay court double season, you know, for example, and maybe even skip it on grass too. So you just don't push yourself and you're too exhausted. It will be. By the way, imagine if the USA had Coco Gauff and Jessica Pegula in Seville. I think we may well have seen something different. But
yes.
But anyway, I mean, you have those two. You probably win your doubles match each time. And I must say, though, I thought with Czech Republic, I remember them playing the Americans, and I remember thinking, the US need to win their two singles matches because the doubles is going to be tricky, you know, with Siniakova and Krejcikova, and they did win that one. I think we said, wasn't it? That was I actually watched that match. That was straight sets, but it was a humdinger in lots of breaks of serve. I remember. And Daniel
Collins versus
Daniel Collins and Taylor Townsend versus Siniakova and Krejcikova, which was basically the decider to see who would make the semi-finals, because it was 1-1 at that stage. Daniel Collins, who'd also been playing unbelievably well all week, you know, some real, you know, lights out tennis, but also shots from nowhere, you know, lobs that would clip in the baseline and all the other stuff that's in her repertoire, which is just, you know, she has an unbelievable toolbox in terms of tennis, and I love watching her play. And she was bringing that last week in Seville. And that final match, if you like, which also, of course, is the final match for Kathy Rinaldo as captain. A lot of emotion from start to finish throughout the week regarding that. There were tears in the opening press conference. There were tears at the end as well in the final press conference. There seems to be a lot of love for Kathy amongst the team. They even said that, or she even said, Kathy said, I need to get a bench from my back garden, so you can all come and sit on my bench there. So there's a lot of good stuff anyway, and there was a lot of smiles as well through the tears, despite them not making the semi-finals. But yeah, that's that final match. You know, US win that, and who knows what happens in this tournament. They would have ended up playing the Canadians in the semi-final, which I think would have been a very interesting semi-final with USA versus Canada. But we also got an amazing semi-final with Czech Republic anyway, so it was great. But yeah, Daniel Collins was sensational. That match as well was there. There were chances for both. Taylor was probably not at her sort of doubles best, you know, bearing in mind that she's obviously had a very good year with Leylah Fernandez on tour in doubles this year. I felt that Daniel Collins was the better player that particular day, even if this year Taylor Townsend is the more established doubles player this particular anyway. She was obviously carrying her singles form into that match, although they both had chances on top of the net. I think Daniel Collins had a particularly horrendous volley on top of the net that somehow she managed to hit into the net when it seemed to be harder hitting it into the net than getting it over. She was taking a leaf out Harry Kane's school of hitting it into the net rather than over it. Although Harry Kane did do that in the World Cup in the penalty for a penalty last year. But football tick. We'll move back to tennis. But yeah, I mean, I don't know if there's any other stories you want to touch on or any other nations.
No, I don't think so. I think we've kind of covered all the kind of the nations, not all of them, but all the ones I think are worth it. I think actually we may have mentioned every single nation at one point. I'm
Probably
having a look.
been touched
Yeah,
upon. I mean,
we actually
Poland
have.
probably
The
not so
one we
much.
talked about least may have been France.
Yeah, I mean, France's performance probably sums up Caroline Garcia's year. You know, losing to Paolini as she did. She didn't, she didn't seem to be as she seemed to be a bit down on occasions this year, Garcia. I wouldn't say that was the case when I came across her in Seville, but on the odd occasion that I had come across her this year, and also one or two other people, at least Vanch from talking to us, I just thought that she wasn't quite the bubbly sort of Caro Garcia that I want to see. Oh, she even did touch upon that in her press conference pre-tournament, I think it was, and she said these sort of significant words, which were, "It's been a tough year on and off the court." So I don't know exactly what she means by off the court, but possibly the sort of coaching upheaval and then reappointment, I think, may have been touched upon there. But yeah, didn't go into too much detail. Germany, I did touch upon then. They look pretty glum, really, to go home as early as they did, or at least in terms of go out as early as they did. And Laura Siegmund was frustrated, even though I don't think this match really mattered. They lost their final. She was in a doubles partnership. There was a curious thing with Tatiana Maria as well, where she was in the doubles lineup and then mysteriously didn't play the doubles match. It was a last minute change, which sometimes happens, but normally that's when they've played a singles match and it's been a bit arduous, or they played the singles match and they picked something up, or just something happened in their singles match which made the coach then decide to change. It might be a confidence issue, but the captain side changed at the last minute, and Tatiana Maria didn't play. She then played her singles match the next day for just 3 games and ended up not continuing. So maybe that's related to the absence. But the captain was very guarded when it came to the reason why he changed. Didn't explain. He just said issues. He tried to make it seem a bit better in that it was nothing serious, but issues. But yeah, so the Germans, and yeah, Laura Siegmund said basically that she just ran out of gas, and she was struggling physically in her match. She also looked a very tired figure in the press conference when I saw her after that doubles match, and I think the Cancun exploits sort of caught up with her here in Seville.
Yeah. Possibly, yeah. I think for the Germans, with Tatiana Maria, I'm hoping it's nothing too serious, because given her age, recovery from injuries like this may not be smooth for her now. So we hope to see her back on court in 2024, doing pretty well. I did want to just say, just touch actually on moving away from the main Billie Jean King Cup. And this is probably not something you're too familiar with, but it's ironically, we were talking about the US versus the Czech Republic, or Czechia, in the group stage, kind of almost being a final. They actually did play the final of the Junior Billie Jean King Cup, which the USA actually won 2-love. Which ended up being, which was interesting because none of those names I'm really aware of, but whereas the Czech team had some very promising looking youngsters in there, and they were playing in Cordoba, so also in Spain. Main
That's
reason,
only about an hour down the road from here, hour and a half.
but I thought that was interesting. It's interesting results. Like, they both played each other. It's kind of 1-1. So maybe the US junior team need to play the Czech senior team for spoils.
Yeah. By the way, what days was that held on? Exactly the same days? Do you know? Or
I frustratingly don't have the
because I
exact.
saw a bunch of juniors wearing. It might have been that they it was over a shorter period of time, or something like, because I think on Tuesday or maybe
The 12th of November. So yeah, it was more or less the same.
When did it start though?
6th.
Okay. Maybe they did a day trip or something, because there was a load of junior players, like about, I don't know, 100 of them, but maybe they were even younger actually, so maybe there was something else going on. But I just remember seeing a bunch of these kids, I would guess 13, 14. How old are the juniors?
Well,
16,
we're talking
15.
players like for the British team, like Hannah Klugman, sort of like 14, 15 probably.
Okay. Anyway, saw a bunch of these kids that sort of clearly representing the various countries because they were all wearing their sort of, tracksuits with the attire. And by the way, Keen, we'll come to your question in a second. I'm sure Nick can also add to what I've got to say on that question. But and I just remember seeing all these kids thinking it's unbelievable to think there was because about 100 of them all passed through the press room as well. And it was like I said to one of my colleagues, I was like, some people think that one of those is probably going to be number one in about 10 years from now, world number one.
Yeah.
At some point,
or playing at the Davis Cup finals in 10 years time, and like and like having the and actually the Spanish team did pretty well in the juniors. They got to the semis, but they lost to the Americans and then lost to the British team for bronze medal. So Britain got the bronze, and that's why I want to talk about juniors, because that was all over my Twitter feed, because various individuals from the British team were tweeting, like Katie O'Brien, former player, was the captain. And obviously there's some British fans who are following junior prospects. And as I said, Hannah Klugman and Minju and Hetfazar Oluwadare are all three players who are highly touted juniors from the British side. So it's as a Brit, he doesn't usually get excited about British tennis, to be honest. It's kind of it's interesting that they're still managing to generate some hype and get some notable results fairly early on. So that was just something else I wanted to touch on there.
No, very glad you did. Nick, I don't know if you've seen this question. I'm going to give my thoughts on it, and then you can add to it. Keen, there is no better time to make that transition. And it doesn't have to be a transition, by the way. You can be basically like me, where I think this year more than ever, I've been probably a little bit more WTA than ATP, but that may change next year if ATP is more exciting as I think it was in 2022, especially if a certain Spanish 22-time Grand Slam champion returns. But I also think this is a sweet spot because the ATP sucks right now. I just haven't seen, I think about Australia. We had a great Wimbledon final. We had a great Cincinnati final. But I know Keen's really into the challenges. And so there's probably never a better time to either start watching more challenges or more WTA, because unfortunately, and this is nothing against Novak, but no one is stepping up right now. So every tournament does seem to have a fairly limited.
Carlos isn't stepping up every week. I think it's probably more.
He hasn't stepped up since Wimbledon, unfortunately. But yeah, but no one else is either. No one else is. So you're kind of on the ATP. You're hoping Carlos steps up, because if he doesn't step up, there's no way that someone like Stefanos Tsitsipas or Andrei Rublev, or unfortunately even right now Holger Rune is going to do it. So yeah, he sort of follows more challenging, which is completely understandable. But like I say, in terms of WTA, I actually disagree with the legendary Miles, in that Miles thinks that there's not as many sort of big name personalities on the WTA tours there were 10 years ago. But he sort of highlights the sort of 3 or 4 big names from that point, with Sharapova included, of course, and so on. But they're only big names now when we look back. I know Sharapova and probably Serena were sort of went beyond tennis as well. But he threw in the Polish player who got to the Wimbledon final, whose name is Radwanska, yeah. And I'm thinking, she's not a name in the way that, for me, someone like Coco is a name, or Naomi Osaka is a name, or Emma Raducanu is a name, or Iga Swiatek is a name, or Sabalenka, and so on and so forth, Jessica Pegula, and I could go on. And I'm sure I'm missing dozens of other sort of not legendary figures yet, although I think Iga's probably beginning the first chapter of that book at the very least. But they're going to be players. We're going to look back on Coco and Naomi Osaka, and even Emma Raducanu, no matter what else she does in the rest of her career, going, wow, what about that US Open run? That's just out of this world. So I just think there's never been a better time to be more across the WTA than ever before. But it also helps because the ATP is so boring at the moment.
Yeah. Keen, what country are you in?
He's in Ireland.
Ireland, right. So I don't know much about the Irish broadcasting deals, so sorry about that. I know about the US and maybe a bit of the UK. So I was going to say it also depends on how available the WTA is where you are.
Which is a pity in a way, to some extent. I know I get more ATP coverage in Germany than than WTA, for example.
Yeah, because like over here, actually, it's the other way around.
Okay.
Which is one of the reasons why I got more into the WTA. And actually, so keen, I'm the opposite. I watch way more WTA than I do ATP and have done for the last couple of years. I don't watch the lower levels, not because I don't want to, partly because I don't have the time and partly because they're not available. Yeah, I think I agree. I think the personalities involved, the rivalries involved, the fact it's so much more competitive in
And
the
I think
WTA.
Keen
And
has a very unusual take for me. But listen,
I've
tennis,
seen that comment. I've
yeah.
seen that comment, and I'm trying not to address it because if I do, I'm going to go on a rant.
Yeah,
So
but I can give a very much calmer response, which is that is exactly why it's much more
yes,
interesting.
it's much more interesting. It's not serve dominated. It's like
Because
you're going to
I
get
mean,
rallies.
if
You're
you
going to
know,
get
Karlovic goes up a break, job done, you know,
yeah.
or we're just waiting for the tie break between Riley Opelka and John Isner and Turin in particular. But I do know that tennis is an acquired taste and everything else. That I know somebody, for example, such as Carlos, who I was with last week, not Carlos Alcaraz, Carlos from Punta the Break, the better known Carlos, but also Damien as well. They love quick courts. I'm not a fan of speedy hard courts, for example, in particular, but each to their own, you know, and I get that. But for me, the fact that serve gets broken yesterday, what's the name? Fernandez was up, but actually, I think I misread the score earlier. I think I said 6-2, 6-2. She won the last match 6-2, 6-3 because she was up a double break, but she seeded one of those breaks when she was trying to serve it out, and then she then broke Paulini to win the match. So, you know, I actually think that adds to the randomness, and that's why I love it.
I am no interest in watching a foregone conclusion. I am much more interested in watching a possibility of a comeback, a possibility of their, some of them are like, is it always for the best reasons? No, but I actually quite enjoy watching a set where both players are struggling to hold in the men's and the women's game. Like there was a fifth set at Wimbledon between the men between Khachanov and Korda, which was pretty much every game was a break, and I found it hilarious, and I was loving every moment.
Also regarding this, you know, that I still think there's a huge advantage to serving. I mean, it just depends on who it is. But I can think
it's Rebecca serving and she's having a good day. You have no hope.
Right, exactly. Serena as well, and so on and so forth. Sabalenka too, I think, when she's not got the yips. But you're right. Someone like Leylah, maybe Maria Sakkari to some extent, but Leylah is the one that springs to mind in the sort of upper echelons of women's tennis. Just like you do worry about her when she goes up a break, but then I also think about her match against, who did she play and lose to at the US Open in the first round? It was an excellent encounter, and
who was that again?
Leylah. Who did she lose to? I always forget this.
Garcia, I think.
No, it definitely wasn't Garcia. That was in Australia.
No, yeah, you're right. Yeah, so she played Garcia.
It was another incredible hard hitter, but I can't remember who it was. She was just blasting.
It was Alexandrova.
And with Leylah, you know, she would go up a break, but you never could quite trust it. But with Leylah, you also knew she could go down a break or even down a double break, and she might get it back on serve, and she nearly did in the deciding set. So I prefer that drama and that unpredictability. But I know that Damien, for example, loves Karlovic, and he loved going to that carpet tournament recently because it's so quick, and he sort of finds it funny when it gets to like, you know, 6-all in 20 minutes, you know, because it's just serve bot and they're all the way through. But, you know, someone like myself who grew up on Wimbledon, I used to watch a lot of, you know, 7-6, 7-6, 7-6 matches. And yeah, you're just waiting for the tie break.
Yeah.
This is
and we got a few of those at Wimbledon this year as well.
Yeah.
Djokovic, her catch was the primary example. I commentated in that one.
Yeah. Although there was still some intrigue and drama in that one. And of course, in the final, we had that 28-minute, you know, game with Djokovic and
Yes,
Alcaraz.
that was so good.
Yeah. So there we go. But listen, acquired taste and each to their own. I right now just think that the WTA is, if it wasn't so poorly marketed, is the product at the moment in 2023. And nothing can sum that up better than a couple of WhatsApp chats we've had recently, where we're in group chats, which Nick is involved in as well, where I have said Okay, these are sort of 6 off the top of my head. Women's matches of the year. Blue touch paper, lit, go. And there were like 50, no, not 50, but 20, 25, all serious contenders for the women's match of the year. I think on the men's side, I mentioned 4 matches that were either definite or probables. I'm still waiting for the blue touch paper to be lit, to be honest with you, because I think it went out quickly afterwards, because we were getting, I mean, there were so few and so real candidates. I think Srihari mentioned a match between Medvedev and Zverev at Indian Wells, which was quite good. I remember watching it in the pub, actually, and I was on holiday somewhere in Lebanon, I think, and it was all right, but it was never a Sabalenka Rybakina AO. It was never a Sabalenka Swiatek. It was never as good as some of the Wimbledon matches that we mentioned with was it Bencic and who did Iga go out to, and also Ons' run and
Wimbledon. Yeah, Iga lost to Svitolina,
for example, and also basically a lot of Svitolina matches at that tournament.
yes.
But also the US Open final between Coco and Sabalenka, and I know it was 6-2, I think, in the final set, but you just didn't know if Coco was going to hold on and get over the line. You know, I could go on. And there were at least 20, 25 matches that were all contenders. Anyway.
Indeed. Yes. Right. I am afraid that I am going to have to wrap this up, if that's all right with everyone. I know Keen's got some more questions. I would love to talk to them. But
Keen, come and join Vanch and Mario for an ATP match, you'll be pleased to know, for the Rublev Medvedev match.
That is correct, yes. In a group that's suddenly been split wide open by Zverev beating Alcaraz earlier today.
Quite possibly, yeah. Quite possibly.
Thanks everyone so much for joining. Who comes on as always. It's been an absolute pleasure doing WTA Weekly in 2023 for the reasons John has said, is that there's been so much good tennis to talk about.
Yeah, I guess this is pretty much. I had sort of semi thought about it, but I knew it. This is the last one of the year, I'm sure.
This is the last of it, 2023. There's no other. There's a few W125Ks, but we're not really going to be watching those, and we'll probably keep an eye on the results. So I think it's time to enjoy the ATP Finals, Davis Cup, and rest our WTA, our women's tennis fandom until January starts up with the United Cup and with the Brisbane 500. And we'll be there with our Christmas decorations in the background, ready to go. John, thanks for coming on and joining us from Seville. Hope you have a lovely break yourself. And rest of you, I'll see you all very soon, probably for an ATP Finals match. Go and join Vanch and Mario in about 20 minutes and keep talking tennis there. Have a good year.
If you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit that like button. Don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell so you don't miss out on all things tennis.